Welcome to the Dallas Design Sprints podcast. I am your esteemed host, Robert Scrobe. On today's show, I'm very happy to feature Hailey Temple. She's a services lead over at MURAL. She is a marathoner. She's a creative problem solver, a facilitator. And we talked about all sorts of things, from her background at Syracuse and SAP to her current work at MURAL, as well as some of her outlooks on advocating for women in tech and speaking at different conferences. It was a very entertaining and interesting conversation. I really enjoyed it. Hope you do too, and we'll see you on the other side. Hailey Temple, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. It's going to be a pleasure to talk with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Robert. Really appreciate it.
You are the services lead at MURAL. If I didn't know you, what does that constitute? What are some of the things you do as a services lead there?
MURAL is basically a digital whiteboard that helps people around the world collaborate across different devices and across locations. And so my job as a services lead is to deliver programs and resources that help people do just that, collaborate from anywhere across any device. And that can be anything from doing an online program to facilitating workshops for a customer, really just getting them immersed in that experience of how do I work more effectively and have a more productive collaboration session with my coworkers.
So how does human-centered design factor into all of that?
Yeah, it's a lot of my work focuses on using human-centered design as the process. A lot of our customers are really passionate about human-centered design and design thinking. So my job is teaching people the principles of human-centered design and how you can collaborate with teams effectively using that process. I think I also use a lot of human-centered design in my own work, thinking about, well, I'm delivering this training or this program. What do my customers need to be successful? What are their experiences when they're jumping into MURAL for the first time? And so I use a lot of my own methods from human-centered design to produce my work.
And something I noticed that's frequent not only in our discussions previously, but also on your LinkedIn profile is that you see yourself as a creative problem solver, and you show people methods on how to do that. Can you give some examples of how, either with MURAL or on your own, that you've kind of executed on creative problem solving?
Sure, absolutely. A lot of my work, whether it was here at MURAL or at SAP, has been a customer, somebody coming to us and saying, we're having this problem. Either we have new competition, we have to figure out what this digital transformation stuff means. Of course, like all these buzzwords that come in that to technology, and you need to help us find the solution for that right now. And I think my role as a human-centered designer is to take a step back and ask really meaningful questions. Why is this an issue for you right now? Who in your company or who in your customer segment is impacted by these technologies or by this issue? And helping people go through that process of taking that step back and asking why. So, of course, there's a lot of resistance sometimes taking a step back. I think especially when you're thinking about strategy, people want to act quickly. They want to just be given the solution and move forward. But a lot of my work with customers has been facilitating these conversations to say, well, have you really thought about who is impacted by this and how we can help them achieve success? And is this really the right problem to solve? So a lot of my role I call it a business therapist, is bringing people together and helping them have those conversations about what the right problem is to solve, and then taking them forward and saying, well, once we have the right problem, let's go forward and identify that solution together.
But that was your first exposure to MURAL, I believe. That was where you were using that tool to visually communicate your ideas, facilitate different discussions around what you were wanting to do with digital transformation. What was that experience like working at SAP?
Yeah, it was incredibly rewarding. I joined right out of college and it was my first job. And it was incredibly daunting because I was working with executives and a lot of people who were, 10, 20 plus years older than I was. But it made me motivated to learn really quickly. I mean, I didn't have a background in design or design thinking or anything like that. So a lot of my experience was just learned on the job or by shadowing my coworkers or by making mistakes and learning from them really quickly. So it was a huge challenge, but also a great opportunity, especially because a lot of my work was across industries, working with different types of technology. And then from a team perspective, I was working on a completely distributed team. So I had teammates in Singapore, Germany, the UK, California. At that point, I was in Philadelphia. So the need for some way to collaborate and connect was absolutely necessary. And that's where Mural came in. So Mural was a pretty new tool to the market at that point. And I remember meeting the CEO, Mariano, and Jim, who's now my boss. And they were so excited and, showing us this is a different way of working. You thought, you couldn't collaborate visually before, but now it's possible. And to me, it opened up this world of, wow, this is how I think. And this is how I work when I'm in the office with people. And now there's this capability to share ideas or concepts or work together outside of a Word document or outside of a spreadsheet. I was showing it to my teammates and working with them, but it didn't have as much traction as I was hoping with my team, especially it's investing in another tool. But I definitely kept using the tool as much as I could personally because I saw the power in expanding the conversation and having a way to collaborate with teams without having to use a whiteboard or having to use something in the office and then send it back and forth without truly having that collaborative experience. And yeah, it built from there.
So now that you're working at Mural, what's really exciting about the work that you do? What do you look forward to doing all the time?
Oh my gosh, every day, that sounds really cheesy, but every day is exciting to me for a couple of reasons. First, the people that I work with at Mural are incredibly passionate about what they do. And I think we have a great culture of transparency and just kind of a go-getter attitude. So coming from a big company like SAP and coming to Mural, which is much smaller, about 80 people right now, it's just kind of a do-it-yourself mentality, which is something I really appreciate, and people embrace that. And I think also the ability to, like how my mindset was shifted with collaboration and sharing information with people, I get to help people shift their mindset every day, with whether that's my coworkers, and a lot of times I'm showing them how to use these human-centered design methods, or customers will come to me and say, even yesterday, I have all this information in a spreadsheet and it's really hard for me to communicate the key ideas with my team. How do I do that? And be able to show them and even give them a couple of tools and methods from my own tool belt to make that possible. So it's an incredibly rewarding role to have as a services lead and somebody at Mural.
And if you were to look at your career, say maybe 6 months to a year, maybe even longer than that, like 2 years, where do you see the arc of your interests going? Do you find that you're more aligned with managing people and process, or doubling down on the tools and methods that you know of and kind of going in that direction?
I see myself doubling down on the tools and methods piece because it is incredibly rewarding, and it's something that I still see so much opportunity to still learn and grow in that space in terms of just adding more methods and processes to my tool belt. But I also really believe in leadership and showing leadership by doing and practicing and mentoring others. So I can imagine, whether it's conscious or not, organically growing into doing some of that process-oriented work, or maybe starting to manage a few people and helping elevate their confidence and building their own methods as well. Yeah.
What are some methods that you see coming into view or being more emphasized next year?
Next year, what's hot in methods right now?
2020. It's 2020, Hailey. What is on the top mind of every designer? Is it service design, growth design, design sprints? Is it going to be something completely different? How do you see things from your vantage point?
Oh my gosh. So Agile is a huge piece, especially at MURAL, that we're getting a lot of questions about, and that we are exploring as well, in terms of just having a really efficient and effective process to deliver products. And I think even combining different components of different methodologies together. So design thinking going into Agile, or kind of using and pulling different components together is a big piece of it, rather than just saying, well, let's just stick with this one method and run with it. I think people are starting to see more of what's out there and bringing those together. And I think, of course, from the space of remote collaboration, more and more teams are working together globally and just from a distributed mindset. So it's not necessarily that there's new processes or methods out there, but it's more, how do we do it in a way that is still effective, but when we're not in the same room, or when we're not on the same time zone, or we're on different continents. Because that brings a whole new dynamic and a whole new mindset. So that's really what I'm excited about and what I'm focused on, of course, in my work.
Okay. What are 3 things that you feel you do better than anybody else?
I think first is I ask really great questions. I know how to take a step back and kind of look big picture and ask questions. I know how to connect the dots really well on different activities, or even with different people who are maybe working on something seemingly different, but being able to bring them together and unite them. And then I think a lot of my work in sketchnoting and visual and graphic recording and visual thinking, being able to kind of highlight the key points and key ideas and process information effectively in a visual way, is another superpower I have.
I would add a 4th one. In the short time I've known you, you are a natural presenter and public speaker. Of the people I've done about close to 60 podcasts now, you're probably in the top 5 of people that can comprehensively put their thoughts to spoken word, and also have a body of work that speaks to someone who seems very comfortable in the public sphere of speaking about a topic, which brings me to TEDx. Even though you've told me that was the scariest part of your life, that probably in many ways spoke to that 4th superpower I'm thinking of. Why was that so scary for you?
Yeah, thank you so much, by the way. That really means a lot to me, because it's something I am always working on, is public speaking. But it was absolutely terrifying for a couple of reasons. One, it's an incredibly vulnerable space. I think that TED, when you think about TED, you think about people who are incredibly well-studied and well-versed in their topic, and they are kind of sharing maybe their research findings, or have a lot of experience in that area. And for me, my topic was all about kind of the lens of social media and putting it through, okay, well, what was social media like and the impact on my experience in seeing 9/11 as a 7-year-old, and then going forward to today, or at that point in 2015, as a millennial now, has how social media is impacting how we exchange and share information about events like that. Mm-hmm. And I remember calling the TEDx coordinator, and I was pretty much in tears because I had this terrible imposter syndrome. Who am I to share what I think about this topic when I'm just a college student in living in this time. And she did a really great job telling me, it's not necessarily about that, not necessarily about having expertise, but really sharing a story that connects with people and that helps other people realize they can take action in some way. And so to me, it was an incredible responsibility. It was an incredibly vulnerable moment, but it was absolutely exhilarating for me to share that story. And I actually did the TEDx talk kind of in memory of somebody as well. So at Syracuse University, there's a scholarship they award to 35 students, and each student represents one student who perished in a terrorist attack in the 1980s. And so I was representing one student, Wendy Lincoln, who passed away in that attack. And so to me, it's also a really great way to extend her voice and do it in someone's memory and help people realize the power of their actions, especially when it intersects with technology.
That's wonderful. So tell me the next 3 events that you're going to be speaking at that you'll eventually either give the keynote at or the closing plenary or something where you're going to be a major speaker at. Give me 3. It can be worldwide, it can be in the United States, whatever you'd like, but 3 events that you probably know that you could, at some point in your career, you would love to be able to talk at.
Oh my gosh. I think South by Southwest would be really incredible to talk there and be able to provide some perspective. I think also the Grace Hopper Conference would be a big one.
That's a really good one.
When we're thinking about women in tech and advocating for women in technology. Anytime I host a session, facilitate a workshop, facilitate anything public, it's a platform for me to talk and share perspectives. So I don't know if that's like a wash, but
I'll just go this way.
Like, hey, this is available to me. I would like to do another TED Talk, honestly. I think those are incredibly powerful. I'm always inspired by TED speakers, and I know my story is evolving, and I want to come back and show that evolution as a person and as a technologist and a designer.
So as you see your career mature, how are you planning on advocating for women in tech? You have done some work in that in the past, but if you were to project out a bit, how would you want to continue advocating for women in this space?
I think public speaking is a huge part of that. I think, and that's the vulnerable part, right? Is that I'm sharing my story and my perspective on something, and I hope that it can resonate with other women and make them realize that even if they look around and don't see other women or other people who look like them, there are people out there. It's maybe a smaller representation, but it's a mighty representation in the workspace and especially in technology. So supporting women by sharing my own story and having my own voice, and also recognizing certain injustices or issues for women in the workplace right now and speaking out about them. And then I also think the second part would be to, even in my close network of women at MURAL or at any other company, like being able to connect out to them and advocate for them. And even if I think sometimes women discredit themselves very easily, this isn't across the board, but I think personally, I'll say, oh, I can't do this, or I shouldn't do something. And being able to be that person to reach out and say, of course you can, why not? What's stopping you? Or like, how can we overcome this boundary? And then even being able to work through with them and support thinking about ideas or brainstorming how we can make something possible. So even just opening up a conversation with a friend or a coworker.
In your lifetime, do you see the equality of women in the workplace and the equal opportunity that they could have? Do you see a tipping point coming in the corporate world sometime in your lifetime?
I believe so. It just depends on the extent. And I want to make sure it's not just women specifically. I think diversity needs to come across also with people of different races, ethnicities, different abilities. And I think that a lot of companies are taking initiatives to may have more inclusive recruiting processes or have a certain percentage of their workforce be women or be people of minority groups. So I see that progress happening in my lifetime, and especially since a lot more women are connecting over things like equal pay, which is a huge challenge. I think it goes in cycles. We get comfortable with the way things are and we kind of keep things status quo. So I think part of what needs to happen, and I want to be part of that, is continually reminding people and continually pushing the boundary of what can we do better? What's not going as quickly as we hope it would in terms of progress or diversity, and being able to have really open conversations about that, and then saying, how can we get involved in pushing progress forward even more, whether that's from an advocacy standpoint, talking about it, or even a policy standpoint.
From cognitive bias to sketching. How about that for a episode?
Let's do it. Let's talk sketching.
You told me a very interesting story about your origins with doodling and sketching and sketchnoting, and I'd like you to tell that story if you could.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have always doodled in some way or another, and in school and then going into professional life, because I have a bad habit of dozing off or falling asleep in class and then in meetings. And as you can imagine, my boss was not very happy with me dozing off in front of executives or with customers. And I thought, okay, what can I do to make these more entertaining for myself in a way, but also make sure that I'm capturing information and actually understand what's coming out of the meeting, right? So I picked up the Sketchnote Revolution by Suni Brown, and actually to make sure that's the right title, but it was a book by Suni Brown, and it was a workbook, and I basically started practicing what's called sketchnoting. So making your notes visual and using icons and images to represent words. And that really helped me not only stay awake in those meetings, but then also when I started sharing my notes back with people in the meeting and with the person presenting, they said, wow, you really were paying attention. You got this. You understand what I was saying. Thank you so much for capturing this. It's kind of like you're giving them a little present at the end. And so while it was originally a very personal experience, I've found it really evolved to be something more powerful and being a shared experience as well. So it's evolved from sketchnoting to now doing a lot of graphic recording, and then even into some graphic facilitation.
So for anyone who listens to this podcast in the future, if you are in a meeting with Hailey Temple in some capacity, and she whips out a notepad and starts drawing the most elaborate discussions and drawings about what you're talking about, that should be a clue that you need to up your game and start talking about something more compelling. She's more or less telling you through her actions that there's nothing going on here, and she's really just trying to make it so that she doesn't fall asleep.
Yeah, and it's nothing personal, I promise. I mean, I'm all about better meetings for sure, and more productive meetings, but it genuinely is something that I've found it helps me, but then also helps other people. Sometimes I'll just look over and see someone next to me looking and watching me draw, and then it's a really special shared thing I get to have with them. And yeah, I guess if you do want to have a more exciting meeting, I'm happy to even get up there and sketch and make it more interesting.
So they could set you up ahead of time to be like the interpreter of what's going on.
Oh yeah. And it makes it more fun, because then people come up and say, hey, by the way, did you catch this? Or, actually it becomes kind of a reflecting tool as well. So you say, oh, that's actually, did I mean to say that? Actually, looking at what Hailey drew, let me rephrase that. So it becomes a really good reflection or inflection point for people in the room as well.
So are any of those sketches for public consumption? Do you consider them more private in nature? Have you ever considered posting them to Instagram just for fun to kind of showcase that you can do this?
Yes. And I am starting to post more of them to Instagram. So at Hailey Temple, you can follow my adventures hiking and drinking coffee and sketching. I've been talking with a lot of sketch noters and facilitators who definitely encourage sharing and also just practicing, getting in the habit every day of doing a little doodle or doing a little sketch and getting more comfortable with it. Because it's also a very easy skill to lose. It's just like a muscle that you need to flex and exercise to keep getting more comfortable with different ways of working and drawing.
So I'd like to give you an idea that I saw at a previous conference that's another designer did. For the most part, when you get done with a conference, you tend to forget everything that's been there. You get a lot of information, you meet a lot of people, and the conference is done, and it was a good experience. But you don't have really anything to kind of take with you as like a memoir. And this person went to, for all the sessions that she went to, she would write out literally in words and in drawings, like what she was listening, what she had heard and what she kind of took away from it. And if you ever had the notion, if you go to a future conference, that would be amazing for you to do, because then you could say, okay, well, here, you give it to the speaker and go, hey, I just did this. And then you take a picture. It can be something where they keep it as a memoir. I think it's a very good way of building relations with people, but also to flex those sketch note muscles that you have.
Yeah, that's a great point. And even, right, being able to go to a conference, attend a conference and be that person as well for them, even like professionally, but then also it is like a little gift you give back to somebody and they feel heard. It kind of feels like an honor to interpret their words and their ideas. So I love that. I really appreciate that.
And they'll remember you. And the great thing is if you do it for people that maybe it's their first presentation, it's a way of saying, hey, I want to be, besides just exchanging business cards, you go, I just want to show you this that I just did. And it provides a proper foundation for a potential relationship.
I love that. I'm going to do that next time then, for sure.
If you start posting that, I'm going to be promoting that all over the web going, look what
awesome. And hey, maybe I'll do some of yours too. Like if you're doing a sprint or something and just following the action too, it'd be really fun.
I'll take you up on that someday.
Sounds good. Sounds like a plan.
You mentioned just a minute ago that you're into coffee and going to coffee shops. Part of our conversation previously was about you exploring cities on foot and by coffee shop. So I'm curious to know, do you have a top list of coffee shops that are like just the creme de la creme, so to speak, or the ones that if you go to Boston, if you go to Florida or even Texas, you just don't, you skip all the Starbucks, you skip the Peet's Coffee, and you go directly to these places. What are some particular coffee shops that stick out in your mind?
I'm a runner, so I always explore, and run on foot and see new places is my favorite. But then, coffee shops don't go to Starbucks, or I don't go to Peet's because I want to get a local flavor, literally, with the coffee, but it also just it's a community space, and it brings people together. So, oh man, I always just look up things on Yelp or something to find places. But for example, I was just in Portland, which is like a coffee mecca, and it was really hard to choose. Mm-hmm. But I went to this great place called Barista, which has some really delicious and incredible coffee. Their hazelnut latte was unreal. And I don't usually do flavored coffees because I want to taste like the richness. I went to school at Syracuse University, go Orange, and our coffee place was Cafe Kubal, which I worked there for a little bit, and that's where I started drinking coffee. I didn't drink any beforehand. Australia was an absolute dream because they have a beautiful coffee scene as well. Mm-hmm. And they have very different drinks than other places do as well. So that was like a flat white or a piccolo, just deliciously different drinks as well. So I don't necessarily have go-to places, or I'd rather go to small, more exclusively owned coffee shops and try there and appreciate the fact that they are a local place and they're sourcing ethically and making a local community in their area.
So if you were to put on your running shoes and travel and go to different places and run, where are some cities that you haven't gone to yet that you're looking forward to going to and checking out?
Oh man, that is so difficult. Everywhere, anywhere and everywhere. So, well, right now one of my goals is to get to every national park in the U.S. and hike there. So I'm at 17 right now out of 61.
Have you been to Zion National Park?
Yes.
Okay.
It is unreal. And hiking the Narrows is beautiful. We're going to Yosemite in October.
Yep.
Let me see. Different cities I would want to go to. I would really love to explore like Tokyo. I don't know how much of a running city that is. It's pretty crowded, but I think it would just be a really beautiful place to go and explore. Even like not cities, but even just countrysides.
What about Toronto? Have you ever been there? I
have been to, I have run around Toronto.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is really cool as well. It's a great city. Montreal.
What about the Cascade Mountains up in Washington?
I don't know if I've actually been in the Cascades. I went up there a couple of years ago and ran through a local forest, and I felt like I was in a fairy tale. It was absolutely unreal.
Yeah, the forests up in the Northwest are amazing.
It was stunning. Running through a lot of little windy cities like in Lisbon, Portugal, I ran around there, and you just feel like every corner is going to have something different or have this little shop that you didn't know was going to be there. Or running through London is a really special experience as well. Oh man, but I honestly don't have actually, I do have a pin board in my room of different places I want to go, and I can't think of them off the top of my head right now.
That's okay. We can get in later.
Okay.
You mentioned your Instagram account. Yeah, I'm wondering if there's other places that people can go to check you out and find out what you're all about besides LinkedIn. Do you have anything on Mural in particular? Do you have any articles in Medium? What would you want to direct people to kind of get an idea of what you're all about?
Absolutely. Yeah, Instagram is probably the best place. I also do a lot of posting and like cross-posting stuff on Twitter at Hailey Temple. I am writing, I write some articles on Medium and also on Mural on the blog there too.
Hailey, it was a wonderful conversation that we had, and I hope you have a good rest of the week, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Absolutely. We can sketch together, work together. Really appreciate this opportunity, Robert.
Thank you very much for tuning in to the Dallas Design Sprints podcast. If you have a question or comment, feel free to leave those and an email at robert@dallasdesignsprints.com. You can also check us out at Pinterest, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and even Instagram. Hope to see you next time, and thanks for listening.